Welcome back to Secrets of Buried Stories. Today, we delve into a mystery that has haunted the seas for over 150 years, a tale of a ship found adrift, in perfect condition, yet utterly deserted. It is perhaps the most famous, and frustrating, maritime mystery in history, the enigma of the Mary Celeste. Imagine this, a well-maintained brigantine, sails partly set, courses true, cargo secure below deck. She's riding the Atlantic swells calmly. But as you approach, hailing her gets no response. You pull alongside and board, stepping onto silent decks. The ship feels empty. No one at the helm, no one keeping watch, no cook in the galley, no captain in his cabin. You search stem to stern. Silence. Just the creaks and groans of a ship at sea. The entire crew, the captain, his wife, and their young daughter, have simply vanished. This isn't fiction. This is the story of the Mary Celeste, discovered on December 5, 1872. The Mary Celeste was a brigantine, a two-masted sailing ship, built in Nova Scotia in 1861. Originally named Amazon, her early years were plagued with misfortune. The captain fell ill and died on her first voyage. She collided with another vessel in the English Channel, and ran aground off the coast of Scotland. After being salvaged and repaired, she was renamed the Mary Celeste. Despite her rocky start, by 1872, she was considered a reliable cargo vessel. Her captain was Benjamin Briggs, a respected and experienced mariner from a family of sailors in Marion, Massachusetts. At 37 years old, Briggs was known for his piety, caution, and seamanship. He was also a part owner of the Mary Celeste, investing heavily in her refit before this fateful voyage. He brought aboard his wife, Sarah E. Cobb Briggs, 31, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia. Their 7-year-old son, Arthur, stayed home with his grandmother, a decision that would unknowingly save his life. The crew consisted of 7 experienced sailors, all Europeans: first mate Albert Richardson, second mate Andrew Gilling, steward Edward Head, and 4 able seamen, Volkert Lorenzen, Boy Lorenzen, Arian Martins, and Gottlieb Gutschat. They were a seemingly capable and trustworthy group. On November 7, 1872, the Mary Celeste set sail from New York City bound for Genoa, Italy. Her cargo consisted of 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol, a volatile substance used in fortifying wines and industrial processes. The voyage was expected to take around 2 months. Less than a month later, on December 5, another ship, the British brigantine Dei Grazia, was sailing from New York to Gibraltar. Her captain, David Morehouse, was also an experienced seaman and, coincidentally, knew Captain Briggs. Around 1 p.m. that day, in the Atlantic Ocean, about 400 miles east of the Azores, the crew of the Dei Grazia spotted a ship behaving oddly. She was tacking erratically, sometimes heading for Gibraltar, sometimes back the way she came, with some sails set but no visible crew on deck. The Dei Grazia closed the distance, and Captain Morehouse recognized the vessel as the Mary Celeste. After watching her for 2 hours and seeing no signs of life or control, Morehouse sent his chief mate, Oliver DeVoe, along with 2 crewmen, over in a boat to investigate. What they found aboard the Mary Celeste would etch the ship's name into the annals of the unexplained. DeVoe and his men boarded the Mary Celeste over the side, as the main hatches were secured. Stepping onto the deck, they were met with an unnerving silence. The ship was not in distress. No gaping holes, no broken masts, though some rigging was frayed, no signs of a recent storm or collision. Yet, it was deserted. They found the sails were set oddly. The fore staysail and jib were set, but the main staysail and gaff foresail were furled, and the other fore and aft sails were hanging loosely. The helmsman's position was empty. Descending below deck, the scene became even more puzzling. The captain's cabin and the crew quarters were tidy and orderly. Personal belongings were still there: clothes, pipes, navigation books, Captain Briggs's sword, left sheathed, even Sophia's harmonium, a type of organ, was in place. In the galley, pots and pans were neatly stowed. In the mess room, a table was set for a meal, with plates and cutlery. Some accounts say food was still warm, others say cold, but the consensus is that a meal had been interrupted. In the captain's cabin, the ship's logbook was found. The last entry was dated November 25, 10 a.m., placing the ship about 100 miles west of the Azores. It simply noted the weather conditions and the ship's position, nothing unusual. A slate with notes from the previous day's watches was also found, noting routine course and speed. The cargo of alcohol barrels was found undisturbed in the hold. While some barrels were later found to be leaking or empty, roughly 9 barrels were found to have leaked during the voyage, the vast majority were intact. So, what was missing or out of place? Crucially, the ship's lifeboat was gone. There was evidence it had been launched or pulled overboard, as the davits used to lower it were swung out and one rope was frayed, while another was cut cleanly. The binnacle, housing the ship's compass, was knocked over, and the compass itself was broken. The ship's chronometer and sextant, vital navigation instruments, were missing from their cases in the captain's cabin. This strongly suggested the crew had intended to navigate after leaving the ship. There was about 3.5 feet of water in the bilge, a not insignificant amount, but easily manageable with one pump. The ship had 2 pumps, one was found disassembled on deck, though it wasn't clear why or how long it had been that way. The deck hatch covers were securely fastened, except for one small access hatch. There were conflicting reports about bloodstains. Initial reports mentioned possible bloodstains on the captain's sword and rail, but subsequent, more thorough examinations by officials in Gibraltar found no definitive evidence of blood or violence. The stains were later dismissed as rust or other substances. So, the picture that emerged was not one of sudden catastrophe or violent struggle. It was a ship abandoned in haste, but with time enough for the crew to gather essential navigation equipment and deploy the lifeboat, presumably taking provisions with them, though none were found aboard the Mary Celeste. They left behind a ship that was perfectly salvageable, their personal belongings, and even a meal waiting on the table. Why? Oliver Devoe, the chief mate of the Dei Grazia, and his crew bravely undertook the dangerous task of sailing the Mary Celeste to Gibraltar. It took them several days, battling rough weather, but they succeeded. Upon arrival, a Vice-Admiralty court inquiry was immediately launched. The Attorney General of Gibraltar, Frederick Solly Flood, was deeply suspicious. Given the value of the ship and cargo and the potential for a large salvage reward, which the Dei Grazia crew claimed, Flood initially suspected mutiny or piracy, possibly involving the crew of the Dei Grazia itself, who he thought might have somehow disposed of the Mary Celeste's crew after finding them. He even suspected Captain Briggs might have staged the abandonment for insurance fraud. Flood conducted a thorough, almost badgering, inquiry, determined to uncover foul play. However, expert testimony refuted his theories. Shipwrights confirmed the Mary Celeste was sound and seaworthy. Medical examiners found no definitive evidence of violence or blood. The cargo was intact. The behavior of the Dei Grazia crew seemed open and cooperative. Ultimately, the court dismissed Flood's darker suspicions and awarded the Dei Grazia crew a salvage claim, though it was considerably less than the maximum possible, perhaps reflecting the court's lingering uncertainty about the exact circumstances, or Flood's persistent doubts. The official conclusion of the inquiry was inconclusive. They could not determine what happened to the crew. The Mary Celeste was eventually sold, changed hands many times, and continued to sail for years, often still viewed with superstition, before finally being wrecked off the coast of Haiti in 1885, potentially as part of an attempted insurance scam. But the mystery of the missing crew endured. Over the decades, countless theories have been proposed to explain the inexplicable. Let's examine some of the most prominent. Theory 1, mutiny or piracy. This was Solly Flood's initial favorite. The idea is that the crew mutinied against Captain Briggs, perhaps killing him and his family, then escaping in the lifeboat. Or pirates attacked, took the crew, but inexplicably left the valuable cargo and didn't damage the ship. Counterarguments: no signs of struggle or violence were found aboard. Mutineers or pirates would typically loot the ship, especially valuable personal belongings, which were left behind. Why take only the crew in a small boat, leaving a perfectly good ship? Piracy was rare in that area by 1872, and leaving the cargo makes no sense for pirates. Theory 2, Insurance Fraud. Could Captain Briggs, a part owner, have faked the abandonment? Counterarguments, highly unlikely. He put his wife and young daughter's lives at risk. Abandoning the ship while it was perfectly sound and salvageable meant the fraud would be immediately obvious when the ship was found, as it was. Leaving it to be salvaged by another crew would negate the entire purpose of an insurance claim for a lost ship. Theory 3, Attack by a sea monster. A popular fictional theory, but utterly lacking any evidence or credibility outside of adventure stories. There were no signs of structural damage consistent with such an attack, nor any accounts from other ships. Theory 4, Natural disaster, seaquake or waterspout. A sudden, violent underwater tremor, seaquake, could potentially cause a ship to pitch violently, sending water sloshing onto the deck or creating a terrifying sound, making the crew fear the ship was breaking up or about to sink. Alternatively, a waterspout, a column of rotating, mist-filled wind, could have swept over the deck, perhaps dislodging the lifeboat or causing panic. Counterarguments. While plausible for inducing panic, neither fully explains the deliberate launching of the lifeboat, the taking of navigation instruments, and the failure to return to the ship once the immediate, and apparently short-lived, threat passed. If a seaquake caused significant hull damage, the ship would have been found sinking or flooded, which it wasn't. A waterspout might explain water on deck or in the bilges, but not the crew's complete disappearance and the state of their belongings. Theory 5, the alcohol fumes theory. This is one of the most widely accepted and plausible explanations among rational investigators. The Mary Celeste was carrying 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol. By the time the ship was found, some barrels were known to be damaged or leaking, about 9 barrels. It's theorized that fumes from this leaking alcohol could have built up in the ship's hold. A sudden temperature change or rough weather could have caused a burp of these highly flammable vapors up through the hatches onto the deck. Captain Briggs, known for his caution, might have feared an imminent explosion. In a moment of panic, or perhaps carefully considering the risk, he could have ordered everyone into the lifeboat, intending to ride out the perceived danger at a safe distance, possibly tethered to the ship. Elaboration. This scenario explains several things: the hasty but not panicked evacuation, taking the lifeboat and navigation tools, the state of the ship, undamaged, as the feared explosion didn't happen, and the lack of personal belongings, they expected to return. What went wrong? This is where the theory fills in the blanks with unfortunate possibilities. The tether connecting the lifeboat to the Mary Celeste could have broken due to waves or wind. A sudden squall could have hit, swamping the small, overcrowded lifeboat. Or, once separated, finding the Mary Celeste again in the open ocean could have been impossible, leaving the people in the lifeboat to drift and eventually succumb to the elements, thirst, or starvation. The disassembled pump might have been related to trying to clear water in the hold or from a leak, perhaps contributing to the decision to evacuate if the leak seemed to be worsening or causing fumes. Theory 6. Poisoning or contaminated food/water. Could something they consumed have incapacitated or driven the crew insane? Counterarguments. While possible for a few individuals, it's highly unlikely that 10 people would all be affected simultaneously in a way that caused them to calmly board a lifeboat and disappear without any trace of distress left behind on the ship. Theory 7. Ergotism. A lesser-known theory suggests the crew consumed rye bread contaminated with ergot fungus, which can cause hallucinations, irrational behavior, and panic. Counterarguments. Similar to poisoning, affecting everyone simultaneously and leading to such an orderly, yet fatal, evacuation seems improbable. Theory 8. Deep-sea diving hypothesis. A very speculative recent theory suggests the crew were experienced pearl divers and used primitive diving equipment found on board. They may have been engaged in illegal deep-sea diving for treasures or sponges during stops, and a fatal accident occurred involving all of them, or perhaps they were taken by other divers they encountered. Counterarguments: this theory lacks significant historical evidence connecting the Briggs family or crew to deep-sea diving. It also doesn't fully explain the state of the ship or the missing lifeboat and navigation gear in a way that aligns with a diving accident. The alcohol fumes theory remains the most compelling because it accounts for the Mary Celeste's condition when found, undamaged, the missing lifeboat and navigation equipment, intended temporary evacuation, and the lack of signs of violence. It suggests a plausible chain of events starting with a rational decision under perceived threat that then went horribly wrong. However, without finding the lifeboat or any remains of the crew, it remains a theory, unproven and leaving room for doubt. What makes the Mary Celeste such a perfect, enduring mystery is the sheer lack of explanation for a perfectly good ship being abandoned. Most maritime disasters leave behind a wreck, bodies, or clear evidence of what occurred: fire, storm, collision. The Mary Celeste left nothing but a void where her crew should have been. The image of the ship sailing silently on, a ghost ship carrying only the Atlantic wind, captured the public imagination. Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, wrote a short story titled J. Habakkuk Jeffson's Statement, which was a fictionalized and highly sensationalized account of the Mary Celeste, renamed the Marie Celeste, involving voodoo and murder, further cementing the ship's place in popular legend as a haunted vessel. The story of the Mary Celeste serves as a powerful reminder of the unpredictable nature of the sea and the limits of human understanding when evidence is scarce. Was it a moment of panic, a misjudgment with fatal consequences, a freak natural event, or something truly beyond our current explanations? Over 150 years later, the Mary Celeste's silent deck still pose their question to anyone who studies the case: where did everyone go? The ship itself, salvaged and put back into service, outlived its crew by a decade, sailing on as a physical embodiment of the enigma, a vessel carrying the secret of its lost souls to the bottom of the sea when its own story finally ended. The Mary Celeste remains the ultimate ghost ship, not because it was found haunted, but because it was found empty, a perfect, floating mystery box on the vast, indifferent ocean. And the truth of what happened to Captain Briggs, his family, and his crew remains buried somewhere beneath the waves or lost on the wind, a secret that the sea has kept for well over a century. What do you think happened aboard the Mary Celeste? Was it the alcohol fumes, a seaquake, or something else entirely? Let us know your theories in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this dive into a buried historical mystery, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Secrets of Buried Stories for more journeys into the unexplained past.